Some massive news dropped that I think is going to be of interest to all of you. The Warner Brothers Discovery sale is very much moving forward. Start it in animation, and then you go beyond the Spider-Verse and you go into live action, and you meet live action Miles Morales. Gen V Season 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. What are you rating it?
I would say...
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to episode number 3 of Heroes Journey, the official podcast for CBR that deals with all things comics and superheroes. My name is Sean O'Connell. I'm the deputy editor of Comics and Superheroes at CBR, and I'm joined each week on the show by my brilliant and talented co-host, Sierra Nutkevitch. How are you, sir? How are you, ma'am?
I'll take it. I'm feeling very dapper today, you know. I felt like dressing up in costume in a preemptive sort of thing. Oh, which reminds me, actually, hold on.
Yeah. Oh, do you have Nightwing pictures?
No, but here's what I do have.
That's dope. That's incredible. Where did you get that from?
I just thought I'd do the entire episode today in full costume, you know. I just think there's something really funny about like Spider-Man in a suit.
Yeah. No, it looks very classy. It's really
Thank you.
Gussying up the joint. I'd like you to talk about your backdrop as well too, Spider-Man. You're in a new location. You're shifting things up.
You know, office to office, it's just wherever I can find a table. And so you get what you get. You get what you get and you don't get upset.
I like that your cosplay roots are always going to sort of show themselves on this show. I'm expecting something new and different for every episode. So,
I mean, here's the problem is that we're not going to be filming on Halloween this year unless we can find a really good guest. And I have a really good costume for Halloween this year. I'm really excited.
All right, well, that's motivation for me to find somebody to talk to for a Halloween-themed episode of Heroes Journey. Some massive news dropped that I think is going to be of interest to all of you. And so we wanted to talk about it, give you guys our perspective on it, maybe update you guys on some of the details about it. The WB Discovery, the Warner Brothers Discovery sale is very much moving forward. We had heard of the trades as of today that they are starting to listen to offers, unsolicited interest from multiple parties is what we were told. And we've been hearing buzz about some of the parties that might be in play to purchase WB, or at least either a split version of WB or a potentially merged version of WB. According to the things that I was able to read today, all options are on the table. But Sierra, what's some of the bigger things that we've discovered today based on this news that's coming out?
So the offer that was a very public offer that sort of sparked all of this was Paramount, which, as you might have heard, because it feels like this was the news everywhere all the time for what feels like 5 years, but was really only 1.5. Paramount was bought by Skydance Media, which was a smaller company. That's a whole complicated situation. And that meant that the entire Paramount library had now gone under, and all of the subsidiary companies were now under a new ownership. And that meant, as these things always do, lots of restructuring, lots of changes, tons of cancellations, tons of new things. There was something called the Paramount Decree that was, I think it was 1948, that basically made it so that all of the studios in Hollywood couldn't just have basically full vertical integration and create a monopoly in their space. That decree was struck down in order to make room for the sale of Paramount to Skydance. And so now that same company, which already is sort of taking over a large area of this industry, is in danger of those monopoly laws that are no longer in place, is looking to buy another pretty enormous company that takes up a lot of what we watch. Like, something you might not even realize how much WB really has in its catalog.
It's so true. And we're starting to see these mergers, or we've been seeing them happen now over the past couple of years, especially the Disney-Fox merger, which was a massive one. The Paramount and Skydance one is also really big. And Amazon Prime and Apple trying to get into the streaming world and start their own services, and studios also theoretically, is, to me, concerning, right? Because not that I'm against change and not that I'm against the progress and the future kind of thing, but I did like a studio system that had different voices, different companies at head. And when you get to a point where you're down to three, two or three because of several of them merging together, I find that to be troubling because it dictates the types of stories that get made. It dictates the type of filmmakers that get an opportunity. This is a hard enough business as it is to crack into. And there's been a lot of complaint across the board that all we get from the studio system, and if you look back over the release calendars from the majors, we're getting less films released by them, and they're becoming these homogenized, massive blockbusters. Gone are the mid-budget films that now are going to streaming. And I get it. That's the reality of it. But this feels like another step in that direction, and that concerns me.
It's also, they're less likely to take a chance. So everything is IP. And so it's like the remake fatigue of it all. You're going to get we're going to have Jurassic Park 9. If we're not making these mid-budget or even original blockbuster movies, where are you going to get the things that you like, that we remake these new franchises that will spark for a whole new generation of people? And so I share that concern. What is the best case scenario for this sale? Who would we want?
The Paramount bid we've been told was too low, quote unquote. The offer that they made for the I think they only wanted. So right now, just to catch everybody up, the plan is for Warner Brothers Discovery to divide itself up into two separate entities. One would be dedicated to the studio side, so films, and the streaming side. So they're not getting rid of HBO Max or anything like that. The other would be dedicated to the cable networks that are owned by Warner Brothers, and that would be known as Discovery Global. And so the thing to talk about now is how does this affect DC Films or DC Studios, the entity that James Gunn has taken over? And I'm here to say to everybody that I think, in my unproven knowledge of it all, is that they'll be okay because they're all going to fall onto the studio and streaming side, the quote unquote Warner Brothers side of the studio. Everything that's contained in the DC plan for television and for TV streaming shows will be under that umbrella. So they're just going to find out who their new owner is, kind of thing. It's no longer going to be the folks at WB. They'll have somebody to report up to. To that end, I like the idea. It makes me sick in my stomach to say this, but I like the idea of an Apple, of Apple being the place that purchases Warner Brothers because of the ridiculous amount of money that they have. And based on what I've seen, the way that they have worked with creatives up to this point, and have shown a real interest on films like F1, or the most recent Martin Scorsese films, and working with directors like Paul Greengrass to get movies into theaters. So for that reason, Netflix terrifies me because I don't think Netflix necessarily cares to put things in theaters. They have shown an ability to put more films into theaters, but they don't work well with the major chains, the AMCs and the Regals of the world. And if DC Films has a situation where they don't have a distributor that is able to get their pictures into theaters, it's a major, major problem for staying relevant, in the pop culture discussion. So I would like something like Apple. I would like Paramount to maybe step up their game a little bit and up their ante, because at least Paramount has, in my eyes, a distribution model that they could absorb DC and DC Films, DC Studios, and treat them like one of the other franchises that they used to have, because they're losing Mission Impossible. They've kind of fumbled Trek, from a movie standpoint. How do we not have more Trek movies with that cast? Although Trek Television is doing really well. So they have the things in place to do franchises. So I'm leaning Apple or Paramount, but I don't know. Do you have a preference in one way or the other, which way this goes?
An issue we see with a lot of streamers is that these really early cancellations. They test something for one season, And then it's like, oh, if it doesn't immediately catch fire, or even if it does, for whatever reason, these mysterious decision, the powers that be are like, nope, not this one. And Apple doesn't seem to have that same issue. They really commit to their properties. And I think part of it is that their business model is not really dependent on making money off of their subscriptions, because they just come with their devices. Their money makers are the devices. And it seems like, I don't want to say it's like altruistic contributing to the culture, but that's what it sometimes feels like, because there's some incredible experimentation that's happening on those streamers. They don't really advertise as much. And so we talked a little bit about Netflix and its distribution model in theaters. And I mean, hey, I'm so excited for Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, but in the comments, I would love for anyone to let me know, are you able to find tickets to this? Because it's been very difficult to find a showing, even in major cities. And the way that Netflix cancels these really beloved shows and the churn of it, I don't really think we're going to get a Netflix XBuy, because they already have quite a bit of debt themselves. And I don't know that they're going to want to take on almost double the amount of debt that WB has. Right. But it's, discussions worth having. Like, Warner Brothers is a huge get and is about to have this major franchise. And so that hope that we think is going to take off the ground. And so that's just money on the table.
You can't emphasize enough how Apple potentially losing hundreds of millions of dollars on a film means, I don't want to say nothing, but next to nothing to them, right? Like, I think they did F1, just to have the ability to say they did a Brad Pitt movie, like, it's all of their money is coming from other things. But you're right in this certain extent of why it would make sense for them to purchase Warner Brothers, because yes, we are focused on the DC side of it right now. And yes, it would be great if James Gunn and Peter Safran had the ability to work with a partner that could get the movies into movie theaters and the television shows or the prestige shows onto a streaming service, which Apple has and needs a boost, because most people don't really know that much about Apple TV. And they might know it because of a show like Ted Lasso or Shrinking. The one thing that Apple is picking up, because while we are talking about the DC film side of it, is there are plenty of other franchises that come with the Warner Brothers brand that could then get Apple into things like theme parks. The Harry Potter brand is about to attempt to revive itself with this, longer form television series that now could potentially be, because they're talking about this happening by mid 2026. They would like this deal to take place relatively quickly. And so, they are picking up, and then of course the vast library of stuff that comes at Warner Brothers, it puts Apple into another category of them just potentially making money, and going after the other big daddy in the room, which to me is Disney, and that's the theme parks. And that's the way for them to invest into these all new lands that you could do, and create different experiences, that mirror all the different reflections that come with franchises that Apple does not have right now. But they would be able to instantly build up through all these Warner Brothers properties that they could invest into. And I could see them stepping in and doing something like that. I keep mentioning Apple just because they were mentioned alongside Comcast is another one. Comcast doesn't seem realistic to me, but potentially has enough money to get into this conversation. But it's starting to feel like there's only like 2 or 3 legit contenders at the top who have enough capital to be able to do a deal like this.
Warner Brothers is a company that already has a lot of infrastructure in place. Like we talked a little bit about how we talked a lot about Paramount and Skydance and how that, because they were the big contender that set this off. But WB was also just bought by Discovery, and so became Warner Discovery. And that's part of why they wanted to split them off into 2 separate companies that were publicly traded separately, which is its own interesting and complicated thing that is maybe not worth delving into today. Maybe there is room for another company that wants to get into the media space completely, to step in here, because it's already pretty set and ready made. Whether they would agree to that, because they do have to approve the sale, that's another question. Because it's not just about the money, it's also about the partnership.
Who could it be? Who's another non-entertainment entity that could step in and take over?
Non-entertainment? Comcast feels like it's in the same way that like AT&T gets into all these things and Comcast gets into all these things. I'm not really sure.
Mhm.
I feel like this is I got to read the Wall Street Journal and see what's up.
I know.
There's a
No,
world
I
where it's like,
know.
because so much, there is some overlap. I know that there was some deals between Amazon and Warner Brothers. I don't really know the status of either of those situations right now.
Sure.
So could be anything, could be nothing, could just be if the price isn't right, they continue to publicly trade as two, and they split off in a few months when they like they had planned, and everybody keeps going about their day.
Ultimately, this just concerns me for how difficult it is for storytellers to break into an already competitive marketplace. Not that this is irrelevant of anything, but if you watch any film nowadays, we're starting to get into the award season, and there's a lot of these contenders that are coming up through the ranks and just trying to get made, just trying to get financed. The number of producer title cards, the companies that are behind the regular film has an average of 8 or 9 of these before you get to. I'm like, when is the movie going to start? It's like Paintbrush Films and Safe Landing Films and all these random things. I'm like, everybody had to chip in some money for this, and that's the reality of the business model. It's just getting harder and harder. Here as we cover these quote unquote safe superhero franchises, they're not that safe anymore. Because like, all this money has to be coming in from someplace, and we're just waiting around to find out where it's coming in from.
And it's not just about them being canceled, but it's also the health of the franchises, the talent pool that's going to make them. Like we talked a couple weeks ago about James Gunn's origins in indie film and indie horror, and it's if the future, what is the future of superhero movies, of movies in general, of storytelling, if we're not bringing filmmakers up from the beginning? If we're not supporting early career, we're just going to have the same people at the top for a long time until they age out. And then what do we have? We'll have to completely rebuild from scratch, or maybe who knows what there will be left at that point.
Well, the future is going to look very different at the very least, because if anything is shown over the past couple of years, things have changed drastically. And if anything else, this story reiterates to me that things are going to continue to change really drastically. But I don't think, my big takeaway is that for the people who are listening, who are like, well, what's going to happen to my DC? I don't think on a granular level, things are going to change all that much, right? Like, I think this is all big changes happening behind the scenes that probably won't have as much trickle down effect. Unless, as you mentioned, some of these things end up getting canceled because they're kept on a short leash and something that you enjoyed disappears. But, these are questions that need to be answered somewhere down the line, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. And speaking of the next generation and the future, we've got a really interesting talk with Christine, one of our writers from CBR, who will be talking to us about Gen V, the next generation in the boys saga.
We have Christine Prasad with us. Christine, hello. Welcome to Heroes Journey.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
We're so excited to have you here. Your coverage over the course of season 2 has been phenomenal. It's been keeping everybody up to date with the big reveals that are happening in each of the episodes. And especially, I think a lot of people who are watching Gen V season 2 are figuring out how, if in any way, it's going to set up the boys for their big season 5, which is the final season of that show. I have to admit, and I think, Sierra, you're on this train with me, neither of us is really up to speed on Gen V. There's a lot of television to watch. And so that one for me, I've kept up with the boys. I'm plugged in on that main storyline. I haven't watched any of Gen V at all yet. And I feel kind of bad because I have heard some of the cameos that have appeared, some of the characters that have made the crossover back and forth. And I'm not going to make you break down everything that has happened in Gen V, but what I want you to start with is just season 2 in general. Was it good? Did it live up to season 1? Did it meet your expectations? What were your thoughts on season 2 overall?
It did. I really enjoyed it. I found that it was a little bit of a slow start, but it got progressively better as the episodes came out, and there was more things revealed, and there's a lot of individual character development as well as story development, and it really does continue to link very heavily to the boys. So I really appreciate how the two shows go together, and it's still gruesome and very gratuitously violent, which is what you expect from the show. But there's not a whole ton of that in this season. There's certainly a lot, but it kind of shifts the narrative a bit and focuses on the story and Marie's journey as she develops her powers and realizes that she has more powers than she actually thought she did.
Christine, is it imperative for people who are getting ready to watch The Boys season 5 to catch up on these 2 seasons of Gen V? Or is it possible to just go into The Boys season 5 without really knowing what's happening in this branch?
I mean, I think you could theoretically just watch The Boys on its own and sort of fill in the gaps yourself, but I really do think that the shows work really well together. I think that season 1 of Gen V sort of sets up season 4 of The Boys, and then the end of The Boys, season 4, is kind of where season 2 of Gen V picks up. So there are some gaps. If you don't watch the two, you can probably figure it out. The two shows can stand on their own, but I would certainly say that the story fits better if you watch both of them together.
What is some information that we would need to know going into coming out of Gen V and going into season 5?
The big reveal is that Thomas Godolkin, who is the architect of the whole the soup program behind Frederick Vaught, was actually alive this whole time, and he came out, was resurrected by Marie from the powers. Apparently, she's a miracle worker and can bring people back to life. And thinking that he might help them against this evil Dean Cypher, who's the primary antagonist of the second season. And as it turns out, he and Cypher were kind of one and the same. He was puppeting, some guy from the 90s named Doug, who was a VCR repairman, and he kind of took over his body and mind and used him as a vessel, which they didn't realize until she had brought him back to life, and he was ready to kind of enact his goal of soup domination. But part of that was also getting rid of what he called the useless soup, so the ones that didn't really have good powers or were kind of making a mockery of the whole thing. And when he spoiler alert, meets his end by the end of the show, the kids are left with, what do we do next? And Homelander is still the big villain in The Boys, and he's still out there. And he, as Sister Sage, who sort of kind of puppeted Homelander through the 4th season of The Boys and got his plan going, which was actually her plan, I think. And she moved on to phase 2. She's part of Gen V season 2. And after they kind of get rid of Godolkin, they're about to head out to figure out what their next steps are, and that's when they run into Starlight, who is leader of the Resistance. And one of the big reveals in the finale is that A-Train, who was a mole and kind of defected from the 7 in The Boys, is with her now. So she finds them. Of course, A-Train can run at the speed of light and is easy to find them, and she asks them to join her, which is what suggests to me that these characters are probably going to appear in The Boys, because I can't see any way how they couldn't.
Oh, that's really interesting. So it's not like we're prepping for a potential Gen V season 3. This is more like this is a storyline that's going to feed in with these characters into the events, you think, of season 5 of The Boys.
Yeah, and it kind of it worries me a bit, because then I wonder what's left for a Gen V season 3, and will there be one? There's no official renewal, as far as I know, as of now. And it seems like the two stories are meshing together, and whether that means that The Boys, which is going to conclude with season 5, ends in a way that sets up a Gen V season 3, I don't know. But
interesting.
I can't see a route where The Boys will pick up and those kids just kind of disappear and they're not part of the story. Like they'd have to be, at least for the first part of it.
So it seems like there's a lot of, between both The Boys and Gen V, there is a consistent thematic element of characters who flip, changing alliances, changing allegiances. Do you think you could speak to that a little bit in the context of Gen V?
Yeah, I think 2 of the biggest ones for season 2 were Kate and Sam. You might remember at the end of season 1, Kate kind of, became very angered when she realized that they were keeping a lot of these soups, in the basement of the school and experimenting on them like lab rats. And she set them all free, and she started a riot at the school, which ended up getting blamed on, Marie and the others. And Sam, dealing with his, very heavy mental health issues, asked her to basically mind control him so that he wouldn't care anymore and just be her number two to do whatever she wanted him to do. And both of them go through some really, really interesting journeys in season 2 where they flip back to realizing, wait a second, I think I might be on the wrong side. And there's a lot that I need to learn about myself beyond my powers and beyond what I think is the right thing to do. So I think those are two of the biggest flipped characters that are most interesting in season 2.
Christine, we talk a lot about how the superhero genre can contain all different types of stories. And we see this in The Boys a lot. There's a lot of political commentary going on in The Boys, a lot of social commentary going on with it. But through that end, who stands out to you the most as maybe they're giving a performance that gets overlooked because, oh, it's just written off as a comic book adaptation or a superhero show? Is there somebody who is really kind of moving you with the stuff that they're doing?
Jordan is a really interesting character in Gen V. They're a character that can shift from a male form to a female form with unique powers. And I mean, it obviously mirrors real life, situations when it comes to the LGBTQ community. And in terms of trans rights as well. I mean, they call him bigender in the show, which I find is really interesting. And, they've always kind of struggled with their identity, which is literally, because they have two distinct physical identities and each one has a different emotional identity too. So I think that they are somewhat of an underrated character on the show.
That's amazing. See, I think Anthony Starr has done
Yes.
such incredible work over the course of the seasons. And again, I think gets sort of chalked up as like, oh, it's one note, he's playing the bad guy, super villain sort of thing. But I mean, the things that they've asked him to do and that he's done convincingly over the 4 seasons of The Boys has been remarkable. And I love Carl Urban as well too, in the show. But Anthony Starr has really stood out to me.
Well,
Chilling is the word I would use.
Yeah.
Chilling.
Well, yeah.
him in interviews and Instagram feeds or whatever, him his real life self, and you think, oh my God, he's a real person. Like that's just an act. I kind of compare it to Michael C. Hall and Dexter, which is another one of my favorite shows. I know that's not a comic book show, but you kind of see him in outside of the realm of the show, and you think, oh my God, like you don't realize how great a job he does because he's not really like that. Like he's a person, and this is a larger than life character for sure.
I want to go back to sort of some of the themes you were talking about, the political statements that are being made in Gen V and The Boys. It seems like there's a lot of thematic consistency throughout and about what they're trying to say about the world. Like, I mean, with The Boys, especially increasingly in more recent seasons, it's more and more Homelander becoming the cult of personality that we're seeing with the far right. And so I'm wondering, where do we have sort of a similar thing with Gen V? Is it speaking to a younger generation? Like it's called Gen V. And so where are we speaking directly to Gen Z here? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think it's sort of showing that perspective, when it comes to a younger crowd, because they're in a school, they're in a university. These are all teenagers or, early 20s. And it's sort of like they're being indoctrinated into, certain beliefs. Or, there's a cameo at the beginning of the season with The Deep, where he is, Chase Crawford, where he is with a bunch of kids that are about to pledge into a fraternity. And he's talking to them about how they need to fight back against the Northerners. And, he's got this very cult-like mentality. And then there's other characters who are, starlighters, as they call them. So it's Homelanders versus starlighters. And they find themselves having to hide that they're a Starlight supporter because, God forbid, they express their views and they'll be ostracized at the school. So it's very political, and it shows how it, in the same way from The Boys, it's showing how this is impacting younger and more impressionable people who are more easily swayed in their views because they don't really, they're not, adults who have gone through all these life experiences, and they're just as easily swayed by the views that are presented to them, whether it's through the media, through people like Firecracker, or, just the overall sentiment, especially, from a school like Godolphin where they are pushing that narrative, heavily.
Oh, Firecracker makes me so angry as a character.
It's too stressful for me.
I do love the actress, but it's like you are everything wrong with society right now. Christine, what is this setting up for season 5? What do you think we're gonna get as we head into The Boys season 5?
Well, I mean, I think everything is going to come to a head when it comes to this battle. Whether it's resolved in a certain way, I don't know. At the end of The Boys, the President Calhoun was sworn in, and Sister Sage is CEO. Vought, Homelander. There's martial law, and Homelander is considered the voice of the people. So he's obviously going to be pushing whatever his agenda is, which I think is basically abolishing all humans and, making it a soup world. And there's Starlight on the other side of this, who is, it seems, by herself. We know that all the others were captured at the end. We don't know where they are, what they're, who's holding them. And she's kind of on her own now with A-Train, and apparently now with these kids from Gen V to come up with some kind of plan to fight back. I think, if I recall correctly, Billy Butcher had taken off in his car, and he had, the little bit of that virus that was left with him.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm sure that's going to play into the story somehow. I don't know how they're going to conclude it, if they're going to come up with Homelander's dead and he's gone and we won, or if it's going to be something else that maybe sets up another spin-off. I know there's Vought Rising coming, which is the prequel, but I don't know if there's any plans for another spin-off show, which could be interesting.
I wanted to ask you that as a follow-up. What do we know about Vought Rising? I know it's a Soldier Boy show.
Yeah, it's Soldier Boy, and it's going to be focused on him and what's her name? Storm. I forget her name.
Yeah, Stormbreaker. Storm.
I character, but I think it's based on those
Stormfront.
Stormfront.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so those two, I believe it's those two, and it's going to be sort of the origin story of how they came to be who they are, and it was a very, I think, Nazi-heavy storyline because Vought is a well-known white supremacist and Nazi, so it'll be, I'm sure, just as political as the other two shows.
I mean, it really, in light of that, it is really interesting with Soldier Boy as, like Ursat's Captain America, to have, I mean, of course his show would have to be about Nazis, but there is something really interesting about like the continuous struggle of we're still fighting Nazis in 2026.
Exactly. He's obviously coming back in some capacity in The Boys, because at the end, Homelander has shown that he's in a hyperbaric chamber, I think, being kept alive. So that may set up some kind of narrative with him as well.
Yeah, because there are so many sort of dangling plot threads, which obviously could be tied up in The Boys season 5. Like, what do you, as a fan of the franchise, want to see going forward? Would you like to see a Gen V season 3? Would you like to see a spinoff that goes in a completely different direction? There are infinite possibilities with these characters, and we really don't know where it's heading in 5. Just as a fan, what would you like to see?
I mean, I would like to see a season 3 of Gen V. I think the fact that show exists gives The Boys the chance to continue even once The Boys ends. Depending on how that ends, I think carrying the story over to that show again, I hope it's not, beating a dead horse and getting too much out of a show that's already run its course. But I think that there's an opportunity, for the writers to come up with a story that might, link it back again to Gen V. Especially if a lot of these kids like Marie and Jordan and Emma are over in The Boys. And, I think it would maybe be a little too neat and tidy to say, okay, and, 8 or 10 episodes or however many it is, now we've won and we've taken down Homelander and the world is great. Like, I think that there needs to show that this is a long fight. It's not going to be something that's easily, okay, I'm just going to, laser Homelander and he's dead and the end.
Who are some of the characters that you want to take further center stage going forward?
I mean, Homelander obviously gets a lot of screen time, so and I think that he deservedly so. I think his son can play a very interesting role going forward. That's another spin-off opportunity. Maybe there's a storyline that can involve him in a new generation. Sister Sage really intrigues me because I don't really understand what her plan is. I know that she despises humans and thinks that they should be, gone from this world. But then when she found out what Godolkin was doing with the as he calls them, the useless soups, she didn't want that to happen. So there's a little bit of human nature, morality in her. And, I think maybe she just wants Soups to take over, all kinds of Soups. I don't really understand her plan, so I'd like to see a little bit more. And the one person I'm very curious about is Ashley, because I have no idea where she is and what's going on. I remember at the end, in a panic, she took Compound V because she had no other option. She's like, I need some kind of powers to fight back or I'm dead. And we don't know what her powers are and what she's going to turn into and what she can do. But I have a feeling she'll be a very interesting part of season 5.
That reminded me a bit of the movie The Substance that came out last year. Things did not go very well for her.
Monster Ashley.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
She's a fantastic actress, and I think it's going to be really fun to see what they come up with for her.
Christine, overall ranking for Gen V season 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. What are you rating it?
I would say 8.5.
Okay, that's solid.
Yeah, I mean,
Are there any lulls, any sort of gaps in it, or things that didn't work?
I think at the beginning it started, like I said, it started a little slow at the beginning, but it really did ramp up, and there were a lot of shocking reveals. When Cypher starts puppeting Jordan through the TV screen, and he reveals that this is a power that he has, and just to see Kate's face turn white, and Jordan looks at the screen and waves in sync with him. I mean, that was really exciting. And the storyline with Polarity, which I think pays really nice homage to the late Chance Perdomo, because, he plays his father, and Andre has been written off the show, and his character has passed on, just as the actor has. And they really kept his spirit alive throughout the entire series. So I really liked how they ended in a way that, honors him as well. So I think the episodes actually got progressively better as they went along through the season.
That's kind of every season of The Boys as well, too.
Yeah,
I feel like
exactly.
You get a couple episodes to get up and running, and then by the middle of it, it's just all hell breaks loose, and you're holding on for dear life.
A little blood, guts, gruesome scenes, and then, okay, now we're going to get to the story.
You got to get the chess pieces in the place. Is there anything that we didn't ask you about that you feel like we need to know?
Well, I mean, I found Dean Cypher's story really interesting, and I'm a little bit curious about maybe they're not plot holes, but the realization that he was Thomas Godolkin this whole time, at least since the 90s, and he revealed that Godolkin had taken over somebody else's body before that, somebody named Dr. Fielding, I think. Who, once he started getting older and was about to pass away, he found Doug / Cypher, had him kill him and took him over. But, I'm curious how, he said that Godolkin took the strain of Compound V that stops you from aging, the same thing that Soldier Boy took, which explains why Cypher never aged. But then I'm curious, why did the doctor before that age? When did he take this? And there's a little bit of... And then, Marie saw the picture of Dean Cypher as Dr. Gould when she was born. So I'm trying to figure out how that whole narrative works. That's the only thing that confuses me. But aside from that, and I do think Marie's journey has been really great. And the actress is Jazz Sinclair is fantastic. Her story is really setting her up to be somebody that is as powerful or more powerful than Homelander. And that's why I can't possibly see The Boys coming out without her being somewhere in that story.
Absolutely sounds like she's going to be a central figure. All right, we encourage everybody to go back to CBR and read all of Christine's coverage of Gen V, both seasons 1 and season 2. And Christine, we're having you back when The Boys returns for season 5, because we're going to need your expert analysis on all this crazy stuff as it's happening. All right, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Christine.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys.
But we have received some really nice comments from people, and some people have even asked us some questions. So, Sierra, what have we heard from the Heroes Journey listeners so far?
Well, we got a lot of really positive feedback that people really missed having you in their ears on their screens, and so that's been really lovely. And so, thank you guys for that.
That is nice. Thank you.
So we got some questions about if we plan to cover things like independent comics, like Image, Dark Horse, and such, because they love our opinions on series like Invincible or Radiant Black, Rogue Sun, Inferno Girl. That was from Lumpy Monkey. Hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do a lot of coverage, and I anticipate doing a lot of coverage for brands like Dark Horse and Image, especially as they have these incredibly successful titles that are coming around. And not only just the IP that you guys recognize, but what I'd like to do is start putting some titles on people's radars as well, too. Things that we get, because we get access to a lot of early PDFs for titles that creators are really excited for and that we want to get ahead of. Like, obviously there's so many people right now who are reading the absolute titles in the DC universe, and we could talk about those as well too. But when we find something that's kind of offbeat and can get a creator on as well to come and speak, that's my hope for a show like this. I want Heroes Journey to not just reflect all the television and movie stuff that people are doing for superheroes, but to really dive into some of the comic side of it as well too. So yes, look forward to that in upcoming episodes.
Marvel was waiting for Sony to finish up the Into the Spider-Verse before they started tackling Miles. And so I think people wondered if Brand New Day, we might see sort of a lead-in into and crossover into the Spider-Verse at all.
I don't personally think that Miles Morales is going to show up in Brand New Day. But what I do think is that the animated Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, like, I think the Beyond part of that title means that there's going to be an element of that movie that gets out of animation and goes into live action, and that we might get introduced to the live action Miles Morales that way. Like, that franchise so far has just kind of reinvented the way that you tell superhero stories. And the next event, inevitable step to me feels like start it in animation and then you go beyond the Spider-Verse and you go into live action and you meet live action Miles Morales. Is that too fan theory-ish for you, or do you like that?
I mean, I love that. I like Who Framed Roger Rabbit style.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Like, it's possible.
I love that
you
pitch.
could do it.
Hey, if you're listening, guys, if you're listening, creators, powers that be, please.
Yeah.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
Daniel Pemberton is the composer of the scores for those two movies. He was one of the first people to say to me, like, there's no way we're hitting that release date. Like, we haven't started anything on this, and these things take forever.
One of the questions we got was, so where are we going to see Captain Triumph get his revenge on Peacemaker, if not the third season of Peacemaker?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. That feels like one of those stick a pin in it and never return to it kind of thing, which is a shame.
Already?
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing character that has a tremendous motivation now, for wanting to hunt down Peacemaker. But this feels like one of those situations where there are so many other stories left to tell. I don't know. Let's put him next to Harry Styles in Eternals.
Rip. How could we possibly have a top 5 Spider-Man list that doesn't include Andrew Garfield?
Yeah, I know.
We knew we'd get pushback.
I'm more upset that J. Jonah Jameson didn't make it. That J.K. Simmons was left on the cutting room floor for that one. That breaks my heart.
I feel like our honorable mention was just tied first place, if you think about it. It's like we just can't help ourselves.
The thing that kills me the most about Andrew is that I truly feel like he deserves an Amazing Spider-Man 3. Like, that's the sequel that I think should get made because he got shortchanged. He got some redemption in Spider-Man No Way Home, but I feel like people came out of Spider-Man No Way Home and they were like, oh yeah, he was really good. Like, how come we didn't like his movies more? And it's like, you failed him. You failed him at the time. How dare you?
Just like Uncle Ben.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get him as a guest on Heroes Journey sometime soon, but not this episode. This is the end of episode number 3. We'll be back next week with all the latest superhero and comic book, movie, TV news, comics news, and a couple of other major things that are happening. So make sure you hit subscribe and turn on your notifications, and make sure you let your nerdy comic book superhero friends know about the show, that it is up and running. That Sierra and I'll be waiting here for you next week.